Hello, I'm Caroline Berkey, COO of the World Literacy Foundation and the host of our new podcast, Beyond Words. In today's podcast, I'm speaking with World Literacy Foundation CEO and founder Andy Kay. Andy started taking action for literacy and education in 2003 by setting up the World Literacy Foundation. He felt it was time to redirect his life to meet his passion of helping get books into the hands of children with little or no access to literacy support and resources. Andy, I'm so pleased to welcome you to our first podcast, Beyond Words. How are you today?
Yep, doing well, and thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
You're so welcome. So let's start at the beginning. How did it all begin for you with literacy?
Wow, yeah. Well, there was three things really that were quite significant for me that led to the establishment of the World Literacy Foundation. The first thing was in early 2000, I spent several years traveling through about 5 different countries through Africa, and predominantly in rural and remote parts of Africa. And the common occurrence that I found was, as I traveled through schools, that the classrooms were just void, empty of books. And I really wrestled with this dilemma of how can kids learn how to read without access to books. And it was whether it was in Ethiopia, Nigeria, Niger, Uganda and Kenya, it was the same story. So that left a significant sort of impact on my life. The second thing is my oldest son, actually, Trent, is illiterate. He grew up with learning difficulties. And although he's in his mid-30s now, but right through those early years, there were things that were there that was obvious that he really struggled to learn to read, and he had a variety of support, and it really didn't get him over that hurdle of learning to read. And so still today, he struggles just to read a single sentence. So it's something that's very close to my heart and our home. And the third significant thing was my grandfather, Charlie Kay, who was a potato farmer in northeast Tasmania. And he only spent 2 years at school, and then he left school and went to be a farmer. And he was illiterate in his adult life until in his mid to late 40s, he decided that he was going to learn to read. And so as a young child, my grandfather, I sat with him and he told me about his journey around literacy. So those three completely separate aspects of my life were all significant things that led me to the founding of the World Literacy Foundation.
Thanks, Andy. It's so wonderful to hear about the family connections that have been intertwined into everything that you've developed amongst the organisation as well. Was there a moment when you knew you were going to be able to turn your full attention to the literacy charity to help the children and adults that you've just mentioned?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a time in late 2002 where I'd been working with Indigenous communities here in Australia around the area of literacy. And if most people may know that in Australia we have quite a large Indigenous population. There's 100 or so different active languages at the moment. I was involved in the translation of children's books into a number of those languages. And then I came a point where I was sort of thinking more global, and that really led to the foundation of the World Literacy Foundation. I really drew on those experiences in Africa a couple of years earlier. And I just thought really I was keen to leave more of a footprint on a global scale. And then, in May of 2003 was the establishment of the organisation.
Thank you for listening to Beyond Words. If you enjoyed today's show, subscribe, rate, and leave us a review on Spotify and Apple Podcast. You can also connect with us via worldliteracysummit.org. See you at the next episode. This podcast has been brought to you by the World Literacy Summit, the largest global gathering of literacy specialists.